Mayday, 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 78445.
78445, you able to make it to Robertson, 12 to 1 o'clock in about 10 miles.
Negative, engine is off.
I'm Jason Miller, a full-time professional flight instructor. On the Finer Points channel, you can join me as I bring you tips and tricks that I've learned from 20 years on the flight line. When we learn to fly light airplanes, we learn to mitigate three major risks, and those are fire, failure, and collision. Any version of those presents serious problems for light airplane pilots. In a single-engine light airplane, we have one engine, so one of the risks we prepare for in the failure department all throughout flight training is the possibility of an engine failure. Where do we go? And most importantly, once we find where we're going, how do we maneuver the aircraft into that field or parking lot or whatever it is in a way that will create a successful forced landing. Now, I've done a few videos on this. If you haven't seen them, there are links in the description, but make sure you watch those. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit more about how students and instructors can prepare for the possible reality of having to deal with a situation like this. Now, recently we saw this video published where a student pilot was on a solo and experienced this exact situation, an engine failure. And by the way, I thought she did an amazing job. You know, she ended up landing short of the field that she identified, but all in all, she did a really great job. There was another pilot that was kind enough to help her. If I'm critical of anything here, if I do any Monday morning quarterbacking, it's gonna be for air traffic control, because I thought this video was a great example of how air traffic control can sometimes talk too much. All right, you guys, let's talk a little bit about the air traffic controlling here. Now, I'm definitely going to be Monday morning quarterbacking. What are all the phrases? Hindsight is 20/20. I'm not trying to throw this controller under the bus. But the reality is, some controllers are pilots, some are not. Some have good days, some have bad days, and there's a lot to learn from this particular exchange surrounding the air traffic control. So let's just dive right in.
Cessna 78445, maintaining 5,500, student pilot solo.
Hartford, Brainerd, there 2, and the limiter 29904.
Runway 2, 29904, 78445. Contact approach 78445. I'm having engine issues out here.
78445, say again, you're having issues with your engine?
Yes, issues with the engine. Mayday, 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 78445.
When she says mayday, 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 that's absolutely the correct thing. She declares an emergency with that, mayday, mayday, mayday. She reports the nature of the problem. It doesn't appear that the controller gets it right away, because he sends her to an airport 10 miles away when we're about to find out there's one right behind her, 5 miles back.
78445, Roger, there's Robertson, 12 to 1 o'clock in about 10 miles. There's 78445, Bradley approach. Are you able to maintain altitude?
445.
78445, Roger. Robertson's 12 to 1 o'clock in about 10 miles. 78445, you able to make it to Robertson, 12 to 1 o'clock in about 10 miles.
Negative, engine is off.
445, Waterbury's just behind you. 45, nearest airport, about 3 o'clock and 5 miles. It's Waterbury Airport.
All right, I would think that after the Mayday call, he would have told her at least that there's an airport closer than 10 miles ahead. But in this whole exchange, consider how much altitude she's losing. And at the end of the day, when we look back at this accident, what would an extra 1,000 feet potentially have afforded her?
I'm a student pilot solo, and I am panicking, 78445.
78445, Roger. Just stay calm. And tell me if you can see the airport. It's about 2 o'clock and 5 miles now. That's your closest airport.
Negative, I do not have airport in sight, 78445.
78445. So just starting to make your way to that airport. Trim out for best glide. It's about 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in about 5 miles. 180, were you flying with 445 behind you?
Guide them into an airport if possible, 120.
180, about 10 miles behind you, student pilot solo, lost an engine, they're at 4,700 feet.
You want to try to guide them into an airport, 122?
180, if you like to assist, it's up to you. 445, 5 miles southwest of you now. It's a grass strip.
Can you advise on a heading for that, please, 78445?
445, so just heading 210.
210, 78445.
45, it's a 1735 runway.
Finally, he understands the nature of the problem here. He's saying things to her, a lot of things, and finally she asks him for a vector. Now, that was absolutely the correct thing to do. He probably should have offered that up front when he pointed her to the closest airport. But let's just see what we can take away from that. If this happens to you or me or any of us are out there, let's just make that first call. Mayday, mayday, mayday. 236 Sierra Papa. Engine failure. Request vectors to closest airport.
445, flighting 230. So just 230 heading airport 1 o'clock and about 4 miles now.
Heading 230, 78445.
445, it's a grass strip approximately 2,000 feet long.
Affirmative, 78445.
180, that traffic's now about 12 o'clock, about 8 miles. They're going to try to get a Waterbury.
Roger, I'm heading towards the location now, 180.
180, roger. And it's November 41 for the airport. And 445, it's about 11 o'clock and 2 to 3 miles. Do you have it in sight?
Visual, 78445.
78445, roger. Look good. It should be visible shortly. You should see it shortly. It's a 17 runway, so that might set you up a little bit better.
Roger, 78445.
445, the elevation at the airport's 850. It's should be right in front of you now, about a half mile in front of you, maybe just slightly to the right. 445, how you doing?
I'm okay, but I still have a negative on that visual, 784.
445, it should be right below you now. You're showing right over it right now. Center 180, that traffic's now about 11 o'clock and 5 miles. They're looking for Waterbury. I don't know if you've ever been there or have any advice.
Never been there, and I just got in sight with that aircraft. 120.
180, ready. Center 445, you're right above it right now. It should be right below you, grass strip, 2,000 foot. It's a 1735 runway.
Roger, 78445, still scanning.
Now, there's a lot of things he's saying here that I think are going over her head. You know, when he says it's a 1735 runway, I mean, I know what he means. You might also, right? He's talking about a runway that's oriented essentially north-south. But does she know that as a student pilot? You know, is it a 17 runway? Is that like an asphalt rating? Or does that provide extra services? You know, is she really understanding that what he's trying to say is it's a runway oriented north-south? So he could be a little clearer with that communication, and he's starting to get into an area where less is more in terms of the communications.
445, it appears you're going past it right now. Suggest you turn right heading 020.
Turning right.
Center 445, it should be out to your right window when you turn. I've shown you about a half mile just southwest of it. So turn heading 050 suggested. It should be off your right side. You're just slightly above it and west of it.
Roger, I have it in sight, 78445.
78445, very good. Set up as you need, and let us know if you need anything.
All right, now here he does something good. This is maybe the first good thing I've seen him do. He understands that she's over the field and asks her to go into a bank and then says to look out the right window. If I had $1 for every time I was with a student and they told me they were over a certain point that was 2 miles in front of them, I'd be quite rich. You're not over it if it's 2 miles in front of you. And, you know, you can see this if you're a CFI. You can pull somebody's engine and say, hey, where would you go if you lost your engine right now? And they'll say, oh, I'd go to that baseball field up there, 2 miles, 1 o'clock. Okay, now as a CFI, you can just wait a minute. Wait till that baseball field disappears just under the cowling, just under their view, and then pull it again and say, okay, where would you go now? Well, now that baseball field's right under him, but 9 out of 10 pilots will not know that, will not think of it, will not see it. So that was good controlling. When she banked the airplane and looked out the window, she got the field in sight.
Can you please contact Poughkeepsie Tower?
445, we will. Poughkeepsie Tower, no problem.
Thank you, 78445.
And 445, you're doing great. Keep it in sight and keep going.
All right, 445, this is 12180. Do you have any questions? I got you in sight. I'm right above you. Let me know.
Roger, thank you, 78445.
Center 445, you're doing great. Are you set up to land?
Like when he asks her, for example, are you ready to land? I'm sure he's concerned about it. I'm sure he cares, and he's trying to help in the way that he can help, which is talking over the radio. But there's no possible help he can give. If she says, yes, I'm ready to land, it was a waste of time. If she says, no, I'm not ready to land, there's absolutely nothing he can do about it except distract her from the task of being ready to land. So Meaningless question. That should be something that pilots learn to sort of tune out, and that's what she did.
445, I would join it downwind right now, so start, and then base from there. So I would, what's your altitude, 445? Alright, yeah, so start heading to the airport, right base, don't add any flaps yet, just make sure
Landing in the tree, no flaps.
pitch your best glide, turn right now, for the airport. As we approach 1280, that plane just went down in the trees short of the runways.
180, roger, appreciate the help. Function 507, you're clear vision approach running 33, contact Bradley Tower.
Bradley Tower, Fledger 507.
90, appreciate the help. Any indication of exactly where they are, I'd appreciate it.
They're just south of the 12180.
180, roger, appreciate it.
All right, well, it's hard not to look back on this and imagine what might have been possible if she had an extra 1,000 feet of altitude to work on that maneuvering. That's probably what she would have had if she didn't waste time going toward the airport that was 10 miles in front of her, if she got an immediate vector toward the field that was actually closest. What we've seen so far and the rest of this are really two different skills. I mentioned up front that I've shown how to maneuver into a field in 3 other videos, so if you haven't seen those, click the link in the description, or if you have our ground school app, certainly you're learning the way that I'm teaching it. But this idea that once you get below 500 feet, we're going to go around and we've done it is not true. Everybody screws up below 500 feet. So from here, if you're practicing it, you need to practice everything we've done up until now, the A, B, C, D, E thing, practice declaring the actual emergency, what you're going to say, practice maneuvering over to the field that you're trying to find, and troubleshoot the problem on the way. Tip for CFIs, sometimes you should reward that troubleshooting, bring the engine back with a fuel pump or a fuel tank change or something like that. But we'll deal with that in a different video. The bottom line is from there, you need to go to an airport now when you're practicing this and practice taking it all the way to the ground. This student pilot did a fantastic job. I'm happy to hear she survived, but she did fail the part of maneuvering into the field, which is absolutely fixable and something that you'll see in the other videos I mentioned and something you'll see in our ground school app. At the end of the day, our job as pilots is to think like that monkey swinging from vine to vine. Where would I go if I had a possible engine failure? And if it happens, I pitch for my airspeed and turn toward that field as one action. And I quickly check the things that need to be checked. If it fixes the problem, great. If it doesn't, I secure the engine, declare the emergency, and put 100% of my attention into that forced landing as described in the prior video that I did with Paul. So I hope that those tips and suggestions help folks out there. Everybody needs to prepare for this. It's not just a student pilot thing. Everybody goes in for flight reviews. If we're all flying single engine airplanes, this is the fight you want to be ready for. And remember what I say, as a pilot, you're like an athlete. Just because you know how to box doesn't mean you're ready for a fight. Just because you know how to fly doesn't mean you're ready for this flight. All right? That's all for this episode of The Finer Points. If you guys have a video you'd like to see, please leave it in the comments. Remember that the flight chapters are there for our instrument pilot course in the ground school app. We're publishing a scenario today which shows a point-to-point IFR flight from Santa Rosa to Half Moon Bay in actual conditions. I'm the pilot flying. If you want to see my mistakes or learn with me along the way, download your free 3-day trial of the ground school app and check it out. All right, aviators, I'm Jason Miller, and until I see you again, be safe and fly your best.